The camera lights blazed white-hot across the House Judiciary Committee room. The air was thick, suffocating with tension and the weight of words that couldn't be unsaid. Chairman Jordan's gavel hung suspended mid-air, as if even he knew what was coming would be too loud to interrupt. Jasmine Crockett sat at the long mahogany table, her hands folded, her jaw set. She'd walked into that room prepared for the usual partisan theater. She had not expected to become the target of the nation's highest law enforcement officer, but that's exactly what happened. And what she did next would send shockwaves through Capitol Hill, Fox News, and every corner of American politics. Jasmine Crockett didn't come from political royalty. She didn't have family connections or Ivy League shortcuts. She came from the courtroom, specifically the trenches of criminal defense, where justice wasn't handed down from marble columns but fought for in fluorescent-lit holding rooms. She was a public defender. Not the glamorous kind, the real kind. The kind who shows up for people the system has already written off. The kind who walks into a boss's office and says, "You should hire me because I'm black." Not out of entitlement, but because she understood something too many others didn't. Representation isn't a talking point. It's survival. Her boss, Charlie, hired her, and she worked her tail off, not just for clients who looked like her, but for everyone. Because that's what service looks like. Now, years later, she sat in Congress, still fighting, still unafraid, and still refusing to be silenced. But on the other side of the screen, on the glowing primetime stage of Fox News, sat Pam Bondi, former Florida Attorney General, Trump loyalist, and now the Attorney General of the United States. Bondi had the resume, the confidence, the tailored suits, and the media training. She knew how to play the game. She knew how to smile into the camera and deliver a line that sounded like Law and Order but felt like a threat. And that's exactly what she did. During a live Fox News interview, Bondi took aim. Not at crime, not at corruption, not at cartels or corporate fraud, but at Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett. Why? Because Crockett had dared to criticize Elon Musk, because she'd called out his unprecedented access to federal power, his private security detail funded by taxpayers, his government contracts that seemed to flow like water while everyone else fought for crumbs, because she'd exercised her First Amendment right to speak, and Pam Bondi didn't like it. So she went on television, and she sent a message, not a legal one, a political one, and Jasmine Crockett heard it loud and clear. The Judiciary Committee hearing should have been routine. Budget discussions, procedural debates, the usual partisan back and forth. But Crockett had something else on her mind. Chairman Jordan recognized her. The gentlewoman from Texas. Crockett leaned into the microphone. Her voice was calm. Too calm. "Thank you, Mr. Chairman." She paused. The room stilled. "I want to begin with a news alert." A few members shifted in their seats. Joe Biden is not the president anymore. A ripple of uncomfortable laughter. A few groans from the Republican side. "So, maybe," she continued, her voice sharpening, "we can move on. Maybe we can stop living in the past and start doing our jobs, because I think some of my colleagues have confused what we're here for." She let that hang in the air. We're not here to be prosecutors. We're here to be legislators. We write laws. We don't conduct trials. We don't decide who gets sued or who gets dragged. That's not our job. Her eyes scanned the room, landing on faces that refused to meet her gaze. Yesterday, a great American hero, Senator Booker, broke a record held by a racist filibusterer, and he said something that should matter to every single one of us. This isn't left versus right. It's right versus wrong. Her voice dropped, became almost conversational. "And I want to talk about wrong." She shifted forward. "The chairman and I don't agree on much, but we agree on this. Death threats against members of Congress are at an all-time high. Doesn't matter what party, we're all targets now." A few nods. Rare bipartisan acknowledgement. "And you want to know why?" Silence. because of divisive rhetoric, because of selective enforcement, because leaders, people in power, are weaponizing their platforms to intimidate, to threaten, to silence. Her jaw tightened. So, let me be clear. She looked directly into the camera. The sitting Attorney General of the United States went on Fox News, and I'm going to call it what it is. Faux news, and she threatened me. Gasps. Murmurs. A few members leaned forward. She is the highest law enforcement officer in this country, and she used her platform to send a political message to an elected member of Congress. Not because I broke a law, not because I incited violence, but because I exercised my First Amendment right. Her voice rose. I said I don't like Elon Musk, and I'll say it again. I don't like Elon Musk. The room erupted. Some cheered. Others booed. Jordan banged his gavel, but it was too late. I don't like that he's firing people. I don't like that he gets federal contracts nobody else can touch. I don't like that he gets federal law enforcement protection like he's royalty. I don't like that his car dealerships are shielded by the government while small businesses go under. She slammed her hand on the table. That is someone operating above the law. Crockett wasn't done. And yes, she said, her voice steady again, I was happy to see peaceful protests against him on my birthday. I said it then, and I'll say it now. People have a constitutional right to protest. She leaned into the mic. And I told them, just like I've told every protester I've ever advised, consult with lawyers. Stay peaceful. Know your rights. Her eyes blazed. But Pam Bondi didn't show that part on Fox, did she? She didn't show the context. She didn't show the full clip. She took a soundbite and turned it into a weapon. A Republican member tried to interject. Jordan waved him off. And here's the thing, Crockett continued. Other members of Congress, city council members, are now receiving threatening letters from this DOJ, not because they committed crimes, but because they spoke out. She let that settle. This administration isn't about law and order, it's about retribution. The room went silent. And that, she said quietly, is why our country is torn apart, because we can't even agree on right versus wrong anymore. She took a breath. I became a public defender with no criminal defense experience. I walked into my boss's office and said, "You should hire me because I'm black." A few eyebrows raised. He looked at me like I was crazy, and I said, "Let me tell you why. Because when I walk into that courtroom, I bring a level of understanding, a level of rapport, that some of my colleagues won't. Not because they're bad lawyers, but because lived experience matters." Her voice softened. Charlie hired me, and I worked my butt off. For every client, not just the ones who looked like me, because that's what service looks like. She looked around the room. Diversity isn't a threat. It's a strength, and anyone who tells you otherwise is lying. Within hours, the clip went viral. Career Jasmine Crockett trended nationwide. Pam Bondi exposed followed close behind. Cable news couldn't ignore it. MSNBC played the full speech. CNN brought on legal analysts who called Bondi's Fox appearance inappropriate at best, authoritarian at worst. Even conservative outlets had to cover it, though they spun it as Crockett's partisan rant. But the people saw through it. Comment sections exploded. She's saying what we're all thinking. Finally, someone with the guts to call it out. This is what courage looks like. Progressive groups rallied. Civil liberties organizations issued statements. Former DOJ officials, Republican and Democrat, condemned Bondi's actions as a dangerous precedent. Elon Musk, predictably, posted a meme. It didn't land. Pam Bondi stayed silent for 2 days, then released a statement through a DOJ spokesperson. The Attorney General was simply upholding the rule of law and will not be intimidated by partisan attacks. The irony was not lost on anyone. Crockett didn't back down. She gave interviews. She wrote op-eds. She reminded people that this wasn't about personality. It was about principle. When the Attorney General uses her office to target critics, she said on MSNBC, we're not in a democracy anymore. We're in something else." Her colleagues took note. Some privately thanked her. Others kept their distance, afraid of becoming the next target. But the message was sent. And it was received. There's a reason Jasmine Crockett's speech resonated. It wasn't just the words. It was the moment. We're living in a time when billionaires are treated like untouchable kings, when government officials weaponize their power to punish dissent, when speaking truth becomes an act of defiance, and when someone stands up, really stands up, without fear, without calculation, it reminds us what leadership actually looks like. Crockett didn't just defend herself. She defended the idea that elected officials should be accountable, that the law should apply equally, that diversity isn't a buzzword, it's a necessity. She reminded us that this fight isn't left versus right, it's right versus wrong. And in that committee room, under those blazing lights, she drew a line Pam Bondi tried to cross, a line that, for now, held. If this story moved you, if you believe truth deserves witnesses, then like, share, and subscribe. Because voices like Jasmine Crockett's don't just need to be heard, they need to be amplified.